that in the rule book? Well, because the alphabet was invented just here in the Middle East. So the textbook of human history was written down as the Bible in early alphabetic script. And it told the stories and myths and legends of those people, i.e. what we call the Old Testament, even though they left out Enoch, which is a shame, it should be in there. So I've always said that if the alphabet had been invented in the north of Scotland, we'd all be worshipping the gods of Orkney and the prophets of the clans of the tribes of Orkney, which, by the way, I've been to. It's one of the oldest places in Britain. It has Skara Brae, it has ancient archaeological temples and things. It's really 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 BC. It's amazing. And I've often wondered, what were their gods called? Well, we don't know because they didn't have an alphabet. The Jewish tribes got writing the first people on the planet in alphabetic form, 1750 BC, from the Phoenicians who pioneered it. And they were able to write down their myths and legends and stories. And as they did so, and they acquired a state, and they created, a polity, Israel, they then wrote into the scripts, well, we are the most important people. Our shamans are the best. Our prophets were the prophets of the only true God. But I regard that as ego inflation. To use Freudian analysis, if you do the psychoanalytical study of all this stuff, at that point ego inflation comes in. And those scribes were not truly in tune with universal wisdom and humility. They'd inflated their own centrality to history and muddled it up with what I call alphabetic centrality, thinking that was cosmic centrality. And then, of course, their disciples and descendants, Jews, Christians and Muslims, went round the rest of the world, dominating and killing off all the oral shamanic people who carried on with the universal shaman centrality. So anyway, we'll have a good chat round the fire with the priests of Yahweh. There's a lot to discuss, I think. That's my reading of what happened. How we right the wrongs, I think this is why discussion, philosophy comes in. We have to have honest conversations here. And I think non-violence is the only way to right these wrongs. Last thing I want to say about Yahweh is that this tragedy that we've watched unfold in the last few months, well, over a year, since the October 7th attack last year, which was an extremely violent action against Israel, it led to a massively violent reaction back in which 42,000 people have died. To me, as a person who teaches non-violence as the path, and I've just run a conference of Jains helping academically and putting into their conference on non-violence, it's an evidence in front of our eyes that violence is not the way. The world cannot afford to carry on with worshipping violence. We're worshipping the wrong God. We all worship violence here. We've got to start worshipping non-violence. Is there a non-violent streak in Yahweh? Yes. In all the greatest prophetic texts that we've got, it's non-violence that Yahweh wants. He doesn't want violence and power and wealth. He wants humility, meekness, and peace. And so, my great hero, the Rabbi Michael Lerner, who wrote The Revolution of Love, he emphasizes that again and again. And his mentor, Rabbi Heschel, was an example of this. So I was influenced when I was doing interfaith peace work by Rabbi Friedlander, Rabbi Hugo Green, who survived the Holocaust, and others. These rabbis understood that Yahweh wants peace on earth, not endless wars. And therefore I like Yahweh in that peace guise, which I know to be the authentic one. So we've got problems, and it's been watching this play out on our screens that is just, it's like we're in the wrong movie. I want to turn the button and flip the channels because this is ridiculous. Okay, that's Yahweh. Any comments on that? Okay,
Yes.
go for it.
I'm very happy we follow with Ra. So that means there is a neighborhood, and
A community.
they are not, yes.
Yeah.
For example, Yahweh, he said, I will free you from Egyptian slavery.
Mm.
So let's see
Here's
what...
the Egyptian side. So we've got Ra, who is, he's the king of fire in Egypt, ancient Egyptian religion, and he's here with his pyramids, which Plato said the pyramid is the symbol of fire, and Plato studied in Egypt partly. It was the go-to place if you wanted to be a philosopher or a sage. You went to Egypt and you studied in their temples. And that's why Alexander the Great went there and went to the oracle at Siwa when he was declared the Son of God. Ring any bells? There's so many ways of approaching Ra. He's the solar god. He's light. I've talked before about how important light is and the sun. And the name Ra stands for the effulgent sun. The Zohar, which is the Kabbalistic text, which I believe dates partly back to the oral teachings of Moses. So what Moses was teaching that we know from the Old Testament writing is only a tiny bit of it. It's the oral teachings that matter. And they're handed down by word of mouth from rabbi to student. I've been blessed to be a student of some of these rabbis who've taught me. And the Zohar says the following about in the beginning, God created the universe. In the beginning is Bereshith. And what is Bereshith? At the outset, the decision of the king made a tracing in the supernal effulgence, a lamp of scintillation. And there issued within the impenetrable recesses of the mysterious limitless a shapeless nucleus enclosed in a ring, neither white nor black, nor red nor green, nor any colour at all. The most mysterious power, enshrouded in the limitless, clave without cleaving, its void, remaining wholly unknowable, until from the force of the strokes there shone forth a supernal and mysterious point. Beyond that point there is no knowable, and therefore it is called Reshith, beginning. The creative utterance, which is the starting point of all. Okay, this is like ancient Egyptian and Hebrew and Kabbalistic philosophy 101, because it's from that primal word, it is believed, that everything comes. That's why in the Bible, it's the beginning of the act of creation of the universe is God's speech. Now we know from the discoveries of Egyptologists that the god of the word is Ptah, who's the master craftsman of the universe. But he works at the behest of Ra. And Ra is that point of light. Because you don't have to be Einstein to figure out that light is at the heart of the mystery of the universe. Since Einstein, we know that. Energy is maybe a better way of talking about it. Within everything, I've just rewatched Oppenheimer, within everything is this incredible energy fizzing away. Stupendous in its potential power. That's Ra. And I, as a linguist, a lover of sonic mysticism, as it's called, I think the sound Ra embodies the energy that Ra is. Ra. It's like a roaring sound. It's the sound of light going forth. And it's the colour of red. Red is the colour of blood. which is when it gets charged by the oxygen, you know, ultimately from photosynthesis from the sun energy. So we are charged up vehicles of Ra energy. And I go into all the words that have R in the text of my comment on Ra. Ra meant the day, so he was like tin for the Etruscan people. So it's also the responsibility of leadership, Ra stands for. I noted recently in the small print that Egypt's revisiting its peace treaty with Israel, which has been standing for a long time. I mean, Israel's crossed so many red lines in its campaigns and its ceaseless slaughter of Palestinians that even Egypt is now saying, look, we need to re-examine this. I would like to see Egypt suggest a renegotiation that conflicts like this should be put to arbitration automatically. There should be a standing committee on arbitrating conflicts in the Middle East, which they could set up.
Well, we have already a United Nations, and it doesn't mean anything.
Of course.
They don't care.
Well, yes, I haven't been to the UN for quite a while. I spoke there a couple of times back in the 90s. I haven't been invited back. Maybe it's time I went and ran a philosophers of peace.
Please.
You know, we need to get them more active. And if the Foreign Secretary of Britain or France, you know, wants to take on board the offerings of philosophers of peace, you know, we can advise on this. But anyway, R is a fascinating sound, and it's there in the word rune. And the R rune is rido, which means to travel. Again, it's about energy. And you rev a car up. You know, and if you're making a car sound, you go, rrr, rrr, rrr. You know, it's that sort of sound. So I think, and it's in the word prana, which in Sanskrit is the energy that is in air. When we breathe prana. So I think, yes, everyone can draw on the prana of Ra. Question, why did Moses go off in a huff, kill an Egyptian, and create his little city-state, you know, in rebellion against Egypt, if he'd studied in Egypt? Okay, so you've got to read my Tarot of the Gods entry on Yahweh, and the relationship with Ra in great detail. Spoiler alert, according to my researchers, Moses lived at the time of Ahmose I, 1500 BC. Watch the documentary by James Cameron, who made Avatar. 2-hour, fantastic, latest archaeological discoveries that prove that, I think. He was a friend studying with Ahmose I. He believed he was Egyptian. He'd been found in the river and raised in Pharaoh's household. He thought he was Egyptian. He was given the secrets of the royal religion, which was moon worship, and worshipping Thoth in his earlier form when he was called Yah. The moon god that Moses was brought up to study and worship was Yah, even sometimes pronounced Yahweh. And he thought that was the best god ever. He was taught that, because it's light, but the supernal light of the moon, it's always changing, and it's a miracle. Why did he fall out with Ahmose? Was because Ahmose wanted to kick out the Hyksos people, who were Asiatics, who'd been ruling Egypt for 400 years, or a length of time. And he wanted to reclaim Egypt for the Egyptians. And he basically forced them out. Moses then led a escape group. And this is history. This happened at that time. It didn't happen in 1250. It happened in 1500 BC. And Moses successfully led out one of the bands of these people who were kicked out of Egypt. their capital was Avaris. And it's thought that Avaris was the capital of Joseph and the early settlers from Canaan. These were Canaanites kicked out. So I think that puts it all, I think, you know, read the text, but it does make it even more tragic because Moses was partly thinking like an Egyptian, and partly when he discovered he was actually a Hebrew, he kind of joined the enemy group. It's like a Nazi suddenly becoming a communist or something in World War II, or a Marxist becoming a royalist or something in Cambodia, which they did, you know, they flipped. So then the repair job we have to do, the tikkun, is to invoke healing on the conflict between the Ra people and the Yahweh people. You know, retrospective, I call it retrocognitive therapeutic transpersonal healing. You can learn to do meditations, imagine yourself going back in time to these people in those ancient times and showering them with divine grace. And there are techniques to do that in my book on peace magic, which is based on years of practice. And I think that's what they want us to do now. We have to be vehicles for this healing. But we have to do it from a knowledge base. It's not just about airy-fairy visioning exercises. It's about doing that from a knowledge base. Then it's more effective. Okay. Anyway, I think if that's sufficient, is that okay, Ra? Has anyone been to Egypt here? No. Holidays or travel? You didn't get there yet?
I was on my mother.
Ah. Your mother took you when you were in the womb. Oh, that's sweet. So you have been?
Yes.
That counts.
Yeah.
I've been told that.
Yeah, no, well, there we are. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I had a former life in Egypt. When I did a past life regression, that's what came up. And it was quite an important life for me, so. But I won't share that now, that's too long a story. I've written about it in my autobiography if anyone's really interested. Right, let's stop there. So thank you very much for listening and for joining the Philosophy Club. Let's go forth and try and heal all these splits and join the Sayashant team because there's work to be done. Thank you.